Hello everyone, and welcome to Wednesday's Live again. This week I wanted to try something just a wee bit different. A garden subject, which we've done, but also I wanted to try something with a little bit more texture. I wanted to use one of these lovely images from France, from my friend Noël Brechier. This is her garden, house where she lives in Normandy there. Here's Noël in her pastel studio. She's an amazing pastelist. And as you can see, she is not short of any colors here. Hi, Carol. Hi, Jane. Dwight. So this is her garden, one of the views from her garden. This is another of the views, I think, if I turn around, and this is the walkway going back to her studio. And being there was magical. It was almost, I imagined what it might have been like to have been at Giverny when, right after Monet had purchased the place. This image is from the Musée d'Or in further north than Noel's place. But as you can see, I've chosen a kind of subject. I'm looking for something with a lot of texture. And we have all these leaves. And what are the ways we can do it? Well, in the past, we've done it where I treat the foliage in a kind of a blocky, solid form, that's just me. But that's not the only way people paint. What I thought I'd like to look at is Child Hassam, an American impressionist who used a more built-up, broken stroke. As you can see here, these are watercolors. He did these when he was visiting this woman, Celia Thaxter's garden on an island off of the Maine coast. There she is in her garden. You can see how that actually might even be an oil. He worked in both. This is definitely a watercolor. That's the side there. You can see he's using very specific strokes. Hi, Roxanne. It's a different way of working and gives a different effect, and I think is quite appropriate to the subject matter where you have all these leaves and all these textures. What you can see is he's painting around the light shapes of the flowers and filling them in later. And he's using the same process that we usually use, working from lights towards the darks. And in some of these, I think you can see he has put down a little bit of a blocked in the large shape with the lightest tone that would be in there, or the lightest value that would be in there, and then subsequently applies very specific strokes, which means that the surface has to be dry when you apply it, because this is wet on dry. Hi, Becky. So different approach. I love his stuff. You're probably most familiar with Child Hassam for the picture of the flags, I believe, on some city street that hangs in the Oval Office in the White House. But marvelous American Impressionist painter. So we have these two beautiful views of Noel's garden. I can't tell you how beautiful this place is. You go out here, and this is her front yard, and you look that way, and you see Mont Saint-Michel and the bay, and it's what a place to live. It's a perfect place for an artist. I think I'm going to use this one. I like the irregular organic quality of the shapes here. We've got foliage, we have a little bit of geometry from buildings, outbuildings, and her studio proper, her house. I like this, whatever was, looks like a trellis of some sort that she had leaned against there. I think I'm going to try and make something of that with its shadow, because I love these shadows. And these roses here, they look like the Terres Bonnier. They might be kind of spent. These are gloriously in blossom. These, I may substitute some of these into here. So that's what I'm going to do. So for the drawing, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to say where's... Something like this, it's hard to say where's the key horizontal, where's the key vertical. It's just, it's wonderful shapes. It's roughly going to be in, I almost shouldn't draw at all. I really should paint, which is, it can be done. It's something that I want to do. So how do we execute this? Standard procedure, light colors, dark colors. Just because we're working this different way doesn't mean we get out of trying to assess where are our darks, where are our mediums, where are our lights. When I look at this, I say the darkest darks are the shadows. The sky is the next deepest. When I squint, the sky almost drops in with the shadows, not quite, but the illumination on the foliage and certainly the illumination on the gravel path here is the lighter thing. And there's a closer affinity for the sky than for the darks of the shadows have a more affinity for the value of the sky than it has for the value of the gravel, and certainly for the white flowers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a brush which is biggish, mop number, this would be like 14 or so, squirrel mop, and I am going to paint in the sky. This is very different than what I usually do. So some ultramarine or maybe some cerulean, 11 by 15 piece of the paper today is Stonehenge, which is Stonehenge Aqua, which is a little bit more absorbent than, say, the Saunders, certainly more than the Arch. And I'm doing that because we need it to dry quickly, because when we make all these small strokes, such as Child Hassan did, we need to be able to, we don't want them to blend, we want them to be very specific. So I'm going to whoop in the sky. Now, I'm drawing with a brush. I know that might be scary for some people, but we're dealing with big, irregular shapes. I mean, if we don't get the exact contour of that, it's going to change anyway when those leaves grow. All we have to do is say, how big is it? Or more importantly, where is it? Okay, so about 3/4 of the way across. And I'm going to switch to the cerulean, which is a little greener. I'm going to try to stay with the approach that Child Hassan did. He did not do big washes. So you see I'm coming up underneath this while it's wet with the turquoise or the greener blue. There's going to be some darker foliage that goes over that. I'm going to allow for that. Maybe if I need some darker blue up top, I'll put that in when there's water still on the surface. And I'm going to let that bleed down. I might have to tilt this to get the bleed. So with the approach that Hassam used, you can see it's not like a very seamless kind of wash. It's more like a textured kind of thing. So I'm going to drink out the excess here. And just let that work its way down. And can you see the bit of texture there, I think? So that's what I'm hoping to get. He probably did that with a lot of small strokes. He stayed at her property and did some wonderful paintings, oils and watercolors, both of the island itself and her garden and the interiors of her home. I believe she was a poetess, and he was visiting with her. So there's our sky. Next, I want to put in the lighter values of these greens in a big shape, skipping the whites of the flowers and the pinks of these roses. Hello, Samantha. And then I'll proceed to some medium, we'll dry that. I'll proceed to some medium greens, then to darker greens and the deep shadow colors. So out of this, I am going to mix a bright, I'm going to go almost yellow. That is cad yellow light or cad yellow lemon, and it's very lemony. I'm going to get a little bit of this blue and put in there. So I'm leaving some spots for, and see, I'm going to have to be more careful. I'm leaving some spots for what will be painted pink later. So I'm looking for the lighter colors underneath. Leaving white spots. We're getting now over to, let's put a little more blue in, just a bit more, just get a little greener. It pays to modify this color a little bit as we go. So it's not like painting the bathroom wall. So now I have to start looking for where I'm going to put some flowers. You could pre-draw these if you wanted. You know, make a little circle or the equivalent shape. Maybe something more organically shaped than a circle or an oval, because we want them to look like flowers. A little more blue, a little more blue. Why am I adding a little bit more blue? It's the top of this archway that Noel has created that receives more light, therefore more of the lighter color yellow. And as we go further down, we're going to be painting areas that receive less light. Hi, Linda. Therefore, they will not be as light as these regions that are higher up on the arch or the trellis. So, and you know, you can put these things where you want them. They don't have to be exactly where they are. So anytime I see a shape that looks a little too triangle, square, rectangle, geometric, I try to make it a bit more natural looking. And because we're going for this extreme texture here, we don't really have to be ultra precise, because there are going to be other brush strokes in here. So I'm looking, where does this stuff come? Okay, there's a big greenish area in here. It's darker in here, yes, but I'm going to be superimposing other greens, darker greens, on top of this to get the effect of all that extreme foliage texture. And this is where it's like fun to let the brush dance. Make a decision about where you want these flowers or blossoms to appear, and then you have the joy. Get on the end of the brush like this and just let it dance. And yes, right now it looks like a holy mess. It's going to for a little while. But we're going to, as it were, sort of sculpt this form as opposed to paint it. Well, not much. There's a lot of shadow down here and a lot of leaves. So I'll leave that there. Now, getting in here, it's pretty much a darker green anyway. I'm going to get a lot of the blue. A lot of the blue. It's already drawing up there a little bit. See, when I put these marks, they stay dark. The board is at a 45-degree angle, if you could see the table from the side. So a lot of shadow over here. Might even get into the Prussian blue to mix with the ultramarine to get a very dark bluish kind of. Not the darkest I'm going to have in there yet, but kind of comes down here. Now we're actually going to be in building shadow. So I'm rinsing that brush, blotting it on my sponge. I think I'm going to get some ultramarine proper and bring it out to here. Now, we have some light colors appearing in here, which are grays of the building. So a good way to get a gray is with a brown and a blue, and maybe a little bit of some like alizarin or quinacridone rose. If it's too brownish, more of the blue. To get the value we want, more water. That looks a little bit on, this is again a runny mix of paint. So this isn't so wash critical as we usually do. A little more blue. It's a cool gray, yeah. Bluer still. Get a lot of blue in there. Yeah, a lot more water. Because it's going to be fairly light. And you notice I'm banging into some of this here. That's okay because there's going to be darker shapes in there. One of the big things in watercolor is you want to be aware of where can I paint a dark shape into another dark shape, or where can I paint a dark shape, another light shape. Hi, Jane. Let me rephrase that. It's hard for me to talk and paint at the same time. Two light shapes that have a dark shape superimposed later, then you can paint them into each other because that dark is going to cover them. And will look just fine. So I've got some white of building back here. There's some grass. Now, how do I keep that grass from joining with this, sitting in the same space? I'm going to use yellow ochre, a duller yellow, and then get some of the blue and put in that. So this is a less vibrant yellow-green than we might get out of, say, the cadmium yellow. And again, I'm overshooting because there are going to be shadows cutting across this. There's some grass here, some grass here. Now, as we're getting into this area here, we need a more brownish gray. So the same blue-brown mixture, I'm getting some burnt umber and my blues and a lot of water. I need to take this off of white so I can keep the strong whites for these white roses over here, and maybe some of these building accents. So now this, I think we really need to, I know it looks like a mess at this point. Nelia, hello. Nancy, hello. So we're at the holy mess stage, so we have to dry it before we go in with the next stage. So I'm going to mute us first so you don't have to listen to that hair dryer. Okay, so, goodness, it must be nighttime in Moldova. Thank you for tuning in, Nelia. I'm going to go to a stiffer brush. this large, you can see they're roughly the same size, but it's a stiffer hair. Squirrel on this, goat with something stiff in the middle on that. Now, I'm going to save the pinks and any detail in the whites very much for later. I'm going to be painting around those shapes. Let's get the pencil marks out. Now, I want to mix up a more medium green. So not to the darkest darks here yet. I need a more medium green. So I'm going to get some of this Nicolazo yellow with the ultramarine. And then maybe I'll make it a little bluer at one corner. So where are the darker or more medium greens? The lightest greens are going to tend to be on the top. Anything that's perpendicular, that's parallel to the light source, which you can see this is almost about middle of the day. So as we curl under, that's where we start to get to our medium greens. Maybe I'll dirty that up a bit, just with a little bit of raw umber. So leaving little bits of the old color behind. Holding it at the end of the brush so that I'm dancing the tip. So the upper portions I'm not going to be applying much of this color, but the lower underneath as we go under, that's where it's going to start showing up. Behind and under the flowers, I can shape them a little better now. And get some out here that are coming out onto the sky, but most of those are going to be dark, where they silhouette against the sky. I'm tempted to go like that, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to try and paint like Child Hassam did. And of course, no two painters can paint alike. No two painters should paint alike. That's why we go to museums, to see how each painter did it a little bit differently, even though they were looking at the same kinds of things. So always monitor your light source. Say, where is it coming from? Where is the light getting? And where is the light not getting? So underneath the blossoms, there'll be a little bit more of the darker colors. So let's put a little bit more blue in as we're working down here. So hopefully you can see it's beginning to create the form a little bit. We're starting to sculpt it, so to speak. Let's go to the Prussian blue, which gets us a little bit darker still. I'm trying not to circle the flower. I want to make sure that from, if it were a clock face, from say 9 o'clock to maybe 2 o'clock, there's not much shadow, or as much shadow. And again, I don't have to get everywhere because there are going to be some strong darks in here. Maybe a little more yellow. Let's get a more olivey yellow, just for some difference. I always tell myself anything that's the same stays in the same plane. So if I want to create the illusion of volume and space, I have to make sure that I'm changing hue, value, texture, any of the things that we have to work with. Let's put a different blue in. Let's try some cerulean. So the hue, I'm changing the hue of the green. I'm keeping one yellow or two yellows, and then I'm getting a different blue, or vice versa. If you can look in here and see a pattern, it'll be more with the dark colors, but if you can see a pattern, that's a very useful thing. Kind of fun. I don't normally paint this way, but for certain subjects, I think it's just a thing. Okay, now we're going to start getting into some dark colors. I'm going to mop this up because this green can be modified. I can make it more yellow, I can make it more blue. There's a lot of things I can do there. I'm going to get a ultramarine blue and perhaps a little bit of the quinacridone rose, alizarin crimson. I want a sort of a purplish color. Why purple? Because it's a rough complement for all the greens. So I want something with a little bit of red in it. So now I'm going to start trying to paint some of these big shadow shapes. Still again, leaving a little bit of the old color behind. Use the tip, push against it, use the side of the brush. Again, we're staying underneath. Let's try ultramarine, the alizarin. Try to connect those darks. Look for some pattern. Maybe a little bluer as we come down. Some reflected light bouncing off that gravel is getting in here. So that dark blue-green that I'm leaving behind is like the bits of leaf that are in shadow. I'm hoping that's what it'll look like. It's not leaves that are not in deep shade, but still get a bit of reflected light. So now I'm coming across here. Notice that the shapes of the darks will be larger where there's less light, and then that they're smaller where they come out to here. See, big dark shape, small dark shapes. I'm looking up here now. I'm sorry if you hear a lot of buzzing. The cluster flies are very bad this time of year when you live out in the country. And I just vacuum them and vacuum them, but they keep showing up. There's a million of them, literally. Now, the undermost part of the trellis is going to be the darkest, but there is a little bit of light coming out here. I'm going to get some Prussian into this and make it just a wee bit, a little more water, make it a wee bit lighter. Again, under here there should be some light bouncing back into the shape. You can always go back in with more darks if you feel the need. But the lights, you need to keep those. Sticking with that Prussian, I like the Prussian. There is a cast shadow on the gravel walkway there. We're going to do that a little bit differently. So I'm squinting. I'm just squinting. Where do I see darks appear? Where do I see them not appear? And they don't have to be exactly where they are in the reference. We get to, hi Sherry, we get to put them where we want to put them. Let's get more purplish. So the idea is we need to make an interesting shape on our rectangle of canvas or paper or whatever it is we're working on. Some of those white spots there that are left over, I'm going to tint those yellow-green so that they look like leaves that are poking out and getting a lot of light. Smaller marks up here, bigger marks down here. Let's go for a little more cerulean, maybe even some turquoise, a little bit of water. There's a lot of shade in here, and it's going to become the cast shadow going out across there. And I want this to become a little bit lighter because a little bit more light is getting in there. The camera will have a tendency to make that very dark, perhaps darker than we may want. So, or what the eye would see. Cameras are getting better. The phone cameras are getting pretty amazing anymore. But they're still not as good as our eyeball. Hi, Steve. Hi, James. There's no substitute for eyeballs. Let's go back to the Prussian. So the yellow-green that I'm leaving behind is the leaves that are sticking out into the sunlight. I'm going to put a little bit of the alizarin or some red into this to make it more purplish. Now I'm going to try to preserve whatever that is. It's not there in the reference, but I'm fond of it. Compositionally, this shadow coming across here is very important. And if you don't feel confident with it, you might go ahead and draw it. But I'm just going to kind of look, what is the general shape of it? It's somewhat triangular. It's leaning back in space. I'm going to mix up a lot of paints. Well, let's see. I want ultramarine. A little bit of transparent oxide red or burnt sienna, because I'm going on to a new surface here. I don't want to, the color of the surface is going to be different than, because we're changing from one material to another. When a cast shadow goes across more than one kind of material, they need to change hue. So just just going to do a big breakout stroke. Take advantage of, I'm pushing on the side of the brush there. Now while this is wet, I can reshape this. I can actually get more blue into it at one end because it's still wet. I can get more brown into it at the other end or in the middle, because we want to suggest that it's a different material. Now over here, I want to get more blue, so I'm going to get back into the Prussian because I need to go back into this deep shade here. And I'm going to tint those little white bits into something. Let's see. Now there's some sort of, I almost am tempted to try and turn that trellis thing there into a bicycle or something, but I'm going to let it be what it is. You see why I like these oriental brushes? You see how this way it's a sharp edge, but this way it's a flat. So they are miles ahead of us with brush design. I'm going to put a little more of the alizarin in it. Just keep changing up the character of that color. I'm keeping a certain value, but I'm changing the hue within that value range. So if it's a dark, I might make it a red or dark, a blue or dark, a brown or dark, a green or dark. Now back here we've got a doorway. And then back here we've got a cast shadow. So some cerulean in that. Notice I'm mixing on the corner. I've got one puddle of paint going here. These are slow-moving colors. I put a little more of one color in this corner, a little more of another color in that corner, so I can variegate it with a degree, a minor degree of control. So the eave of that building, or something about it, is casting a shadow somehow. Looks like it's more than one building, actually. I don't want to make too much of the... Now, I have to go back, and I'm putting some water in that, what I was just using, a little bit more brown. I'm going to come out of here and make the other cast shadow. I'm going to connect it all the way across. And I'm going to bring parts of it under here. I mean, you know, you wait 20 minutes and you'll get something like that anyway. Won't matter. There's our walkway a little bit. Keep it irregular. I need to get some very dark blue-green transitioning up out of that underneath the archway. There's a back to our medium yellow greens. Well, thank you, Sherry. Boy, I tell you, this place where this lucky woman lives is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So I'm going to actually get some pale yellow ochre. So I'm glazing now. So there's a building back there. I think that needs to be a little bit more grayish. So some of what I used for this shadow, a little more water, and it was a slate roof type sort of arrangement. There was a one outbuilding leading into another. There is some building in here, but I think I want to, how do I want to execute that? Get some burnt umber, ultramarine blue. So I know there's building in there. There was like a step there into Noelle's studio. No, her studio was around the corner. Beautiful studio, just racks and racks of the most stunning pastels you've ever seen. Woman is phenomenal pastelist. Now, we're else going to have some fun. We're going to get to the flowers, I promise. But what I want to do now is I want to put a lot of a kind of water with some of this nondescript brown, and then I want to splatter to create the look of some gravel, maybe. Guess maybe not so much, huh? Notice that you put the point of the brush in the direction that you want the stuff to go. You don't want to go like this because you'll get it in the sky and then you have to make birds. And I usually smear these little marks to make them look that much more irregular. Maybe I'll even put a little of that in here. Now our flower, well, you know, we can still do Prussian blue into these greens, dark, dark, dark greens. We can still do some of that. I'm going to orchestrate my darks. Lead the eye. These are pathways. The connecting your darks. Let's put a little alizarin in it. Taking the eye for a little ride, walking it around the picture, making it go where we want it to go. Now, these leaves are going to silhouette a bit more because they're sticking out into the open sky and would therefore look dark. I think I need a bit more darkness in here. Here, squinting like crazy to get the effect I'm looking for. Some of these leaves as well will be silhouetted and therefore not very dark. Under here, I think I need to be quite a bit darker. It's where the most shade is, right? I'm hoping for a sunny week next week. I'm going to be in the Bluff Strokes Paint Out in Dubuque next Wednesday. As last year, I will try to do instead of a Wednesday live, do a walkthrough of everyone's paintings after they've all been hung up so we can see them, because there are just some to die for wonderful artists that come to that event. And it's such an honor to get to paint with them and see what they've done and what they do over the course of that week. Okay, I think that let's get in there and do our flowers. Well, he says as he finds one more dumb thing to do. It's hard to quit when you paint this way. There's too many fun things to do. Okay, let's get a smaller brush, stiff brush, or like a tiny oriental brush. We're going to get into our pinks. Some of these, we're roses I'm going to keep white. Some of them I'm going to make the Terrasse Bonnier pink. I'm using that Opera Rose, which, can you see it there? It's very pink. It has a bluish undertone pink, which is wonderfully floral. And alizarin or quinacridone rose won't quite get the effect. They're just not as vibrant a pink as you might want for a pink rose. Some of them a little darker because they're curling under, therefore they will be darker. The bottom side of them will be a little darker than the top side. Let's sneak one across. Now I'm going to get some, where's my lavender? Oh dear. Here it is. The Holbein lavender. For the insides of some of these whites, and the ones that are in shade, I'm going to paint them with the Holbein lavender so that we get the impression that they're underneath there and not getting as much light. Some of them will get less light than others. Okay, let's have about that over here too. More lavender. It's a unique color. It's functions like a gray. You squeeze it out of the tube, it looks like a cornflower blue. You mix it, it makes, mixed with yellow, it makes a very pale, soft spring green for, those first greens that come out in spring. But it is slightly opaque, so you have to be careful with it. I'm going to throw a little bit of that in here or there too, just for, I think there should be more shadow coming across there. I'm also going to separate this building from that building a little more. I apologize, Noel, if I haven't got your buildings right. It's a beautiful property. One of the most gorgeous places I've ever been. And then to get to see your paintings to boot. So yeah, you want more pink? Put more pink. I'm going to get a little bit of turquoise, dirty turquoise, to tint in here so that it appears to be in shade. Maybe even over here too. Yeah, let's have some turquoise. You can't go wrong with turquoise. Dirty turquoise. Richard, hello. Also notice when, probably should have, you notice in the reference here, this is as dark as that. probably wouldn't look like that when you were looking at it with your actual eyeball. The shadow, the cast shadow that is further away, you're going to want to make it just a tad lighter. And I should have done that, and I didn't quite do that. So I could possibly, we'll see, make this shadow a little, I'm going to glaze it with some cerulean. And that will change the hue and make it more vibrant. So I can't really make that shadow back there lighter, but I can make this one more zippy or more high chroma. So I'm just going to get a little bit of the Prussian and some of this green to make some final dark green accents. In this area here. And perhaps the deepest shade, what would be the deepest shade areas. And maybe just a little bit more of the yellow in there to get a paler green to tint some of these whites greens so that they look like leaves and not some, well, you can have as many leaves and as many blossoms as you want. It's okay, so let's peel it and see what we're getting. I can already see that I think I want to make this a little warmer and a little darker. So I'm going to warm that up with some grayish brownish, mostly brown, a blue and a brown, but mostly the brown. Siennas, umbers. Fair amount of water in that, so it's not too dark. That's mighty too dark. Let's see. Bit more water. That's better. Better. Okay. A little bit of warmth right down at the front edge there. Just pulls your eye down to it. So there's that optional approach to painting foliage. The more broken stroke of Child Hassam. He was more or less a contemporary of Sargent and Homer. But a different style than the way they painted. And every bit as legitimate, and possibly one that maybe is more appealing to how someone else might, you might want to paint. Well, thank you, Carol. Actually a little bit closer to how an oil painter would paint, but we still, because it's watercolor, we have to go the light to dark sequence. And then we just paint around those things. But thank you, Becky. Well, there's the, you could treat this the same way. Any of these type, you'd want to put in a base of the blue. The greens are darker than the blue. The trellis is darker than the blue. Maybe a base of the lightest greens in here, or the medium greens, and then go in with those darks and separate it. But you will have to paint around your lights. Here, these particular roses, I think you could feature them a little more because they're closer to us. I think if I had done this one, hi Shelley, I would have, you can see there's a trellis here where she's training the roses across. I think it would have been fun to like paint more of the red and the green across there. Again, lovely shadow. You can see on this one how it changes when it's on this flagstone or concrete. It's one gray, but when it gets over here on the gravel, it's another. It's more brown in it, more blue in it here. So just be careful of that when you do cast shadows. When you go across a new material, you have to change the color. Oh boy, I tell you, Brittany and the Cherbourg Peninsula, where it goes from Brittany to Normandy, is just one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. And merci Noel for letting us use your garden. There she is. I don't know what zone they're in, but darn near everything grows there. I saw cactus-type plants. I saw not avocados, artichokes all over the place, both to eat and as decorative plants. It's just, whew, what a place. So, next week, I'm going to be in Dubuque, painting with all those other wonderful painters. And I will try to share some of what we all do there next week in lieu of a Wednesday Live. But until then, everybody stay safe, stay sane, and I'll see you next week or in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.